The Pearl of the Indian Ocean, the Teardrop of India, the Isle of Dharma, Ceylon, Taprobana, Serendip, and Mumudi Chola Mandalaman. To the Tamil, it's Ilankai. To the Sinhalese, it's the one you've probably heard, Sri Lanka. This place has had so many names, and today it goes by the next country up here on Geography Now.
It's time to learn geography now!
Few countries on Earth have such a small size with a massive ancient backstory that predates the invention of paper. And as you guys know, I love having people from the countries in the country episode. Today's guest star is going to be Janelle.
What happened? Sri Lanka?
First of all, what is this you got going on?
This is actually, so if I were to wear this shirt in white and wear my white sarong, that would have considered the national outfit for Sri Lanka. But I had to spice it up, man, you know.
Clearly,
We matching.
Yeah.
We matching.
All right, Janelle, very quickly, what are some things you think the whole world should know about Sri Lanka?
We have the most prettiest girls on earth. Check. And prettiest guys too. You see this? Hospitality it's at like 308%.
Yes.
And hey, lastly, we are not Indian.
You are not India.
No.
You are not Indians.
Nothing wrong with India though. Hey, I love India. I'm just letting y'all know.
With that, let's jump into this country that is definitely not India.
So Sri Lanka has quite a bit of going on in the way their land operates and holds together. Oh, and the best part, y'all know, man, we got a city called Kandy. Hey!
Candy!
Welcome to the candy shop.
First of all, the country is an island nation located in South Asia, situated in the Indian Ocean, south of the Bay of Bengal, just off the southeast coast of India's Tamil Nadu state. The interesting thing is, the country is almost connected to India via the Ramu Setu Bridge, sometimes called Adams Bridge, an incredibly shallow, partially submerged series of sandbanks, shoals, and islands, only about 100 meters wide, that straddles between India's Pamban Island and Sri Lanka's Mannar Island. The space between Pamban and Mannar, known as the Palk Strait, is only about 25 kilometers wide, and due to the shallow depth, reaching at maximum 10 meters deep, this hinders all large-scale cargo ships from passing through from the Gulf of Mannar in the south to the Palk Bay in the north. At one point, this shallow channel was reportedly passable on foot until a cyclone in 1480 destroyed what little land was above water. Today, any maritime trade must either go completely around Sri Lanka, otherwise land or air transport is the only way around. In any case, the capital is Sri Jayawardenepura Kotte, a neighborhood within the largest metropolitan city of Colombo. Colombo is often mistaken or just default called the capital because it's easier to say, but nope, to be fair, it's Sri Jayawardenepura Kotte. The country is divided into 9 provinces, each with their own little flag, and the 9 provinces are further divided into 25 districts. The country has 5 international airports, and of course the biggest and busiest one is in Colombo, Bandaranaike International Airport. In addition though, the country has 20 waterdromes, or airports for seaplanes, throughout the coasts and interior of the country. They are all operated by Sri Lanka Airlines domestic branch called Sri Lankan Air Taxi, with its hub at Colombo's Kelani River Peliagoda Waterdrome. From there, the port of Colombo is not only the largest port of the country, but also the largest transshipment hub in South Asia. The country has a very extensive rail network that reaches almost every part of the country except the sparsely populated southeast, which also has the Yala National Park that no roads or towns can be built on. The rails have 3 main lines: the Colombo Operating Region lines in the southwest, the Anuradhapura Operating Region lines in the north and northeast, and the Nawalapitia Operating Region lines in the Central Highlands. Here you can reach the highest destinations of the country, like the famous city of Kandy.
The literal Candy Kingdom, and that's for the Westerners, but I'm gonna say it like Noora Raj. Candy's called Noora, so we say Noora Raj.
Oh, and also, Janelle, I heard something about the word hotel. It means something different in Sri Lanka. Explain about that.
It's so funny that you caught that. So hotel it could be your sandwich shop, man.
Yeah.
You'd be like, oh yeah, there's a hotel over there.
So if I go to Sri Lanka and I ask for a hotel, you could point me to a cafe.
Depends on what you're looking for and whom you ask.
You have to be specific.
Yeah.
Now, in Sri Lanka, you're going to see a lot of past and present. For example, of course, you have the metropolitan layout of skyscrapers and towers in Colombo or Negombo. But then right in the middle of the city, you'll find statue after statue of Buddha.
Yeah.
Oh, and all over it, you'll see tanks or wevas, I think they're called. They were built by...
Man, y'all, he's trying. He said vevas. It's called a veva, you know?
Veva.
Like,
Veva.
Va.
Va. Now explain what is a veva.
So that's a man-made, pretty much a lake, and they're all over Sri Lanka, man. Depending on the kingdom, each and every single king, Parakrama Bahu, I think.
That's what I have written down. Yep. And he built the largest one, the Parakrama Samudra.
Yes, Parakrama Samudra. Damn.
Yeah. Oh yeah, and fun fact, under that king, Sri Lanka actually for short periods of time actually kind of took over parts of South India and what is now Myanmar. But it wasn't exactly colonizing.
Sri Lanka is a land full of mystic sites. They have 8 UNESCO heritage sites, right? 6 man-made and 2 natural. Tourism is a huge part of our country, baby.
Apart from the, UNESCO site.
And of course, it is said Sri Lanka has the highest waterfall density in the world. Baker's Waterfall, Bopatella, Ravanella, just to name you a few.
And that brings us to the next segment, the...
So as the 25th largest island on Earth, baby, in a tropical climate, Sri Lanka can hold its ground in maintaining a unique biosphere.
Yes, and one thing you'll notice though is that the element of water is a constant theme for almost everything in Sri Lanka.
For one, being situated in the center of the Indian plate gives them the lucky advantage of not dealing with any earthquakes or volcanoes, and also, the country has somewhere around 60 main offshore islands, the largest being Mannar Island, which connects to the Ramsetu Bridge. The islands go all the way off to Kachativu Island, the westernmost point of the country. From there, the country has a unique topographical layout. There are 40 low-lying lagoons and mangrove systems covering much of the coasts at about 7,000 hectares in area. This is known as the coastal belt, aka the lowest parts of the country. The largest system in the north on the Jaffna Peninsula with the Jaffna Lagoon that extends into the Palk Bay. Now, as mentioned, many of the inland bodies of water are man-made, and the largest being the dual complex Kalabalau Reservoir found near the center of the country. It was actually built by King Datusena in the 5th century AD. From there inland, you reach the plains, which make up the majority of the country's surface area, ranging from about 30 to 200 meters above sea level. This is where the majority of the nation's agriculture and forests are situated and are fed by 103 rivers, the longest one being the Mahaweli, which flows over 200 miles or 335 kilometers from the highest region of the country, the Central Highlands, all the way down to Kodiyar Bay near the city of Trincomalee. The Central Highlands, found in the south central part of the country, which are also in themselves a protected World Heritage Site, is also where you can find the tallest peak, Biduru Talagala, at over 2,500 meters above sea level. And finally, due to the topographic layout of Sri Lanka, the country has 2 climate zones. The plains and valleys of the north, northwest, and southeast are known as the dry zones, classified as tropical savannas with shrub forests, bushes, and even cacti in some of the driest areas. Yet in the highlands and valleys of the southwest, you have the wet zones that receive nearly twice as much rainfall annually, usually in the monsoon season from October to January.
Speaking of water though, Sri Lanka is heavily powered by water, as in over 1/5 of the country is powered by dams and hydropower.
Economically speaking, Sri Lanka has always been a major trading hub, once being the crown jewel of the spice trade, and with the highest literacy rate in South Asia at somewhere around 95%, they have top-notch labor force.
That's why we are hard workers. Tea and textiles usually come to mind when discussing resources and production. Sri Lanka is currently the 4th largest tea producer and largest tea exporter in the world, beating out Kenya and their most famous domestic brand, Dilma. I got Dilma at the house. I had Dilma before I came. Now that kind of came out weird. And the country has about 900 apparel factories, exporting mainly to Europe and the USA for companies like Victoria's Secret, Liz Claiborne, and even Tommy Hilfiger.
In addition, their mining sector is world-renowned. They even have the world's largest blue sapphire, the Star of Adam. So many colors within this country, and one thing that's even more colorful is the wildlife. So, Janelle, in your opinion, what does it mean to be Sri Lankan?
It is to be able to uphold all the values and everything that my parents have taught me. So there's tiny little nuances. There's like we would actually go down on our knees and touch the feet of my parents, and we would bow them. Depends on where you grew up. The culture gives you an identity.
Right, because there's a lot of different types of Sri Lankans out
Absolutely,
there. Yeah.
absolutely. Yo, you could be Sri Lankan.
Who knows?
If you're Sri Lankan, can he be Sri Lankan?
I'll just put this on.
Yo, I used to wear this, and we eat with our hands too. We don't use fork and spoon.
Oh no, yeah, that's the best way. You gotta feel the food.
Hey. See, I told you he could be Sri Lankan.
Anyway, with that, let's go to the graph.
First of all, the country has a population of about 22 million people, and they are the oldest democracy in Asia since 1948. The country is primarily made up of the Sinhala at somewhere around 75%, whereas the majority of the rest of the population is made up primarily of Tamils divided into 3 groups: Sri Lankan Tamils at a little over 11%, the Moors at about 9%, and the Indian Tamils at about 4%. From there, the small remaining populace is made up of various people groups like the Burghers, the Malays, the Vedas, Chinese, and so on.
Burgers.
Yeah, we'll talk about the burgers later. They use the Sri Lankan rupee as their currency. They use the types D, G, and M plug outlets, and they drive on the left side of the road, former British colony. Now, of course, due to the demographic structure, Sinhala, an Indo-Aryan language, and Tamil, a Dravidian language, 2 completely unintelligible languages, are co-official in Sri Lanka.
However, the prevalence of each one is concentrated in their respective regions. Tamil mostly in the north and northeast, and Sinhala in the center, southeast, and west coast, baby. maybe.
Nonetheless, official documents must be available in both languages.
Yes.
And wow, they both have incredibly good-looking scripts. Just look at those curves and diacritic vowel indicators. Gotta love me some good abagida.
Yeah, that was weird. But the point is, yes, the scripts look pretty cool.
English is also a nationally recognized language. Now, not everybody can still speak fluent English, but I'll tell you a few things that they know for sure though. They know Bob Marley, right? They know 50 Cent, they know Coca-Cola.
That's all they need.
That's all they need.
That's all they need.
What's crazy is, like, I've been to houses where, they don't speak a word of English.
But they memorize the whole rap. And the whole
they
song.
know the raps.
Yeah.
I'm like, you're really spitting. But you can't even speak a word of English. But, like, they know Peter Andre, Mysterious Girl. Yo, they know all of it. I'm like, how?
You give a kid a song, they're just gonna absorb it.
I suppose my people just soak. Like, they're like a sponge. I mean, woo!
In any case, prior to the British, the Portuguese, Dutch, and almost French all took a jab at trying to control Sri Lanka. This is also partially why you see so many Sri Lankans with Western names and last names, especially with Portuguese. In fact, the three most common last names in Sri Lanka are Pereira, Fernando, and De Silva.
Yeah, man, that's so funny because as I was growing up, I read books and there was Fernandos and Pereiras and De Silvas. I'm like,
But
you look like me.
Yeah.
What's this?
Whoa, this is a cricket ball, and guess what? We're gonna talk about it. Now, most textbook sources will tell you that the national sport is volleyball, and yes, technically it is. However, cricket is often considered the most celebrated and practiced sport. There have been a lot of records in cricket, and even have the highest team score in test cricket at 952. I'm gonna pretend like I actually know what that means. They won the World Cricket Cup in 1996, making it the only Sri Lanka sport that has ever been crowned a world champion. They even have their own version of March Madness, in which parades and performances dedicated to the opening cricket matches of college cricket season. There's Sri Lankan style tailgating, after parties, drunken fights between fans and dancing. It's that crazy. So you don't see that kind of treatment with volleyball in Sri Lanka. Otherwise, of course, cricket isn't the only thing going on in Sri Lanka. We have rugby, netball, and Australian rules football, which are all growing in a lot of popularity. Their women's netball team has won the Asian Netball Championship 4 times. 4 times.
For art.
Everyone in the country knows this lady, known as the Asian Black Mare, who won the only Olympic medal for the country.
Technically, there was another medal when they were under British Sri Lanka.
They have 2 native styles of martial arts, China Di, which is like Kung Fu, but more focused on grappling, and Ang Ampora, which is both a body combat and weaponry style that uses things like knives, swords, and whip blade. And finally, this is not so much a sport, but rather a recreational activity. Sri Lankans are really good at tabletop game Karam. Strangely enough, there's literally a World Cup for this game, and Sri Lanka usually dominates and consistently holds a world champion title in both men and women's divisions. They even hold the dog division as well. He was watching that ball. All right, me and Tarch are gonna go play some cricket.
Thank you, Art.
We have this pillow fights, which is like
Pillow fights.
Pillow fights. So it's you're sitting on a log, and you just knock each other out until one of them falls down. So Sri Lanka's history was already intertwined with international interaction.
You don't get the nickname the Pearl of the Indian Ocean by accident.
For one, Sri Lanka has stated multiple times that it takes specific non-aligned foreign policies and does not take sides with major world powers and pursues friendship with all. On that note, much of the government might say China is close due to the many loans and investments that have been given to them. However, like many other small developing nations, Sri Lankans are keeping a close eye on these acts. Many Sri Lankans move to Australia for studies and work, especially in Melbourne, which has the largest Sri Lankan community out of any city in Australia. Indonesia and Singapore offer visa-free visits to Sri Lankans, and many of the Tamil Sri Lankans have family with the Tamil community in Singapore. Now, you would think that, as their closest neighbor, relations with India would be super close, but it's a little complicated. It's more like a love-hate relationship that they've had for thousands of years. Yes, in a sense, both the Sinhalese and Tamils have roots in India, and yes, they owe the introduction of Buddhism to India via the Ashoka Empire, and yes, India tried to help sort out the civil war, even though Rajiv Gandhi was assassinated by the Tamil Tigers on the process. Nonetheless, much of the diplomacy is rooted in aid that India provides, and of course, Sri Lankans love things like Bollywood films and Indian cultural imports. They just, really hate the Indian cricket team. Pakistan has always been a closer ally, as Sri Lanka kind of acted like a transit point between West and East Pakistan, which is now Bangladesh, during the Indo-Pak wars of the 60s and 70s, as Indian airspace was closed to them. Pakistan, in return, has supplied much of Sri Lanka's armed forces with military equipment and has helped them during civil war times. In the end though, interestingly enough, one country that seems to pop out in many Sri Lankans' minds when asked which country is closest to them would be the Maldives. As island nations in the Indian Ocean heavily dependent on maritime trade and culture, the two instantly click on almost any diplomatic level. The heads of states have visited each other to discuss bilateral relations and interests. The Maldivian Defense Force is trained by Sri Lanka's military. Over half of Maldives' exports go to Sri Lanka. Many Maldivian tour operators are located in Sri Lanka with travel packages, including both countries, and they even share an underwater fiber optic cable for joint telecommunication service. Overall, these two countries work together very well and understand each other probably better than anyone else.
All right, and in conclusion, obviously, Janil, I think you should take this. I'm out.
So something that I want y'all to know, man, our bounce back game is super strong. People try to take over our country thousands of years ago. And then we had civil war going on. The tsunami hit. We bounced back from that too. And it's depicted in so many areas of who we are. We never stood down. We always rose.